Hello, welcome to this video. Today, I just wanted to do a bit of an ad hoc exploration around the idea, is manipulation our fault? And I want to say straight up, like abuse, that sort of malicious manipulation, when we're full victim to that, it's never our fault. But as I've grown, as I have gone through my healing and recovery journey from abuse and things, I've just had to become more aware of power dynamics, natural power dynamics, and manipulation in life and what that all is. And it can be a bit of a challenge to us, especially if we have been victimized or we feel kind of stuck in a victim mentality or anything, when someone suggests that we are responsible for our healing, or we are responsible for not allowing ourselves to be manipulated. And I found that that is a truth that I had to accept and come to terms with. So I'm just fresh off writing it up, finishing up a course called Freedom from Illusion. And I felt that question kind of burn up at the end. And I thought, well, I've got a little bit extra energy. I'll do a video for YouTube about this idea. We're often conditioned, well, not, we're always conditioned to be a certain way as we grow up. And there's many reasons why we're conditioned: for our own safety, so our parents can manage us, because we need to grow and learn, because we have to be somewhat functional around other humans and all things like that. We don't get to choose that environment that we can go into it. We can go into a deep spiritual thing. We do choose our environment, blah blah blah. We choose our parents, all that, which might be true. I kind of believe in some ways it is. But this human body, this whole mind, body, energy system, our spirit might have chosen, our very wise soul may have chosen this reality, but it isn't the only part of the experience. So this infant child that was born into whatever circumstances it was born in didn't choose to be born. Its parents, how it was born. Okay. I do, like I say, I kind of think part of our spiritual growth and things, our karma, is overcoming or evolving through finding ourselves through those circumstances. But if we are born in a particularly difficult, manipulative environment, if we're born into abusive structures, where all this kind of becomes normal for us, where it's like normal to live in toxic, manipulative, harmful circumstances, that's obviously not our fault. We didn't do anything to cause that circumstance. Now, again, we could talk about past life karma and all that stuff. And it may be the case that in a past life you did something terrible to other people and you were then born in this really difficult circumstance. That's something for you to uncover on your own spiritual journey, perhaps. But that particular infant, as you were born, hasn't done anything. It's an innocent, vulnerable human being that doesn't deserve to be harmed in any way. And the circumstances around that are not our fault. We can grow up in conditions that are way beyond our control, and that is the dynamic of childhood. We all grow up in conditions that we can't control. We can affect them. Obviously, we can affect our parents. We can affect how we get access to certain resources or whatever. We learn to respond in different ways, and that might be manipulation. We could be conditioned through our environment, through the influences around us, to be manipulative and to be manipulated. And that just becomes kind of who and how we are. Often it isn't until we get to like a critical point where we kind of are forced to realize how and who we are and whether that's helpful or not. Often I find it's like mid-20s or whatever, when you've had a stretch of being an adult and realizing, oh, this is not working out well. Whereas it is, some people are really skilled manipulators and they'll never have to face this. And manipulation comes in many forms, positive manipulation, negative manipulation, and it can go too far. And then we've got like power dynamics and abuse and all that. But if we get to this point where it's like my circumstances aren't ideal, the way I am or the way I think or the way I'm behaving and responding isn't resulting in something that I want. My reality, what I'm experiencing is not what I would prefer. It's stressful, it's harmful to myself or others. And we're kind of faced with that moment of choice. Are we going to carry on? I think at that point, then it is our responsibility. So while we are ignorant, we cannot affect ourselves. We kind of almost, our ignorance puts ourselves in a victim mentality, in a victim position. So we're a lot easier to be manipulated, and we can even, just to try and get power, become manipulative ourselves, which can then hurt other people and things. Once we're often presented with that in one way or another, and I do think life, the universe, kind of does at some point present us with these choice moments where we kind of see ourselves or someone reflects something back to us and we can either deflect it and move on, or sometimes it might trigger us, or it might really hurt us, it hit us and oh God, which was something that happened to me. I was accused of being abusive in a really close relationship, and like someone saying that to me was just like, I was like, am I? And I really had to, because just I thought that I would be abusing someone that I loved was just horrible for me. And I really had to reflect on that because I trusted and respected this person. Like, you know what I mean? It was like, if they think that about me, then it wasn't just some random saying it. It was like somebody who I was close to. So that really gave me a choice point then, like a critical choice point. I had to look at myself and I had to face reality. I don't think I was abusive when I look at it. There was a whole dynamic going on there. We were both we were in this weird codependent enabling situation. But I was manipulative for sure. I was manipulative, and that had become, I didn't know any other way to be. And once I started to see that, I was going to say I had no choice there. I did have a choice, and I chose to face the reality of that. So I chose to like look at my behavior, understand manipulation, understand how was I, because I wasn't doing that intentionally. How was I conditioned to think that was normal? Going into doing the shadow work, looking at patterns in my relationships, and then starting to make the change, starting to do the work to really change how I was relating to other people. And the only way to do that, really, you can kind of intellectualize it a lot. So you can, once you're faced with this, you can like learn new ways of being. Like I say, look at the patterns and things, and that's what we look at. Freedom from illusions. There's a whole section on like looking at manipulations and power dynamics and abuse and things. But then the real work is like making the change. And especially then, if you then get to a point where you know all this stuff, and you still choose to treat people in the same way, then that is where we're getting into a very dodgy area of you are potentially being abusive. You are choosing then to manipulate people in harmful ways, despite, negative consequences or negative feedback or anything like that. And that's when I think you get things like karma and that kicking in, where we can do things from ignorance, and there's still going to be a consequence, right? There's still going to be a consequence for something that happens that we didn't mean to or we're not aware of. Those consequences are feedback. So when we get that feedback and we get faced with it, especially then once we look at it and see it, if we then continue to do that, that's like a whole other level of karma and consequences that comes with choosing to carry on the same behavior, to repeat the same patterns, to cause the same harm, to intentionally and therefore maliciously harm someone else or engage in relationships with harmful habits, patterns, whatever you might want to call it. So I think that's when we kind of cross that line, and it is our responsibility And then the other side of that is once we're aware of patterns of manipulation and we then choose to allow people to manipulate us and not step into our power, I also think that there's going to be potentially more consequences to that. So often it's kind of the same sort of pattern with like addiction, in abusive relationships or things. We might not realize we're in it until we have that intervention or that confrontation or whatever it is that shows us our behavior, and someone, some circumstance, feedback presents this is harmful. What you're in is either harming you or other people, or they're harming you, whatever dynamic it is. When we then engage, so if somebody is abusing us and then we see the abuse, we learn the pattern, and we then play into it and we continue to stay as a victim of this abuse, then I do think then, not that we're responsible for it, but we kind of are contributing to it. We're choosing to allow ourselves to be victimized. We can stay in like dynamics potentially, and that's like a self-worth thing, like there, why would you want to? We can potentially choose to remain in what is an abusive dynamic or a manipulative dynamic and step beyond of it, so we're not being victimized by it. We just let it go over us, not let it take our power, and that's a choice. Some people might choose to do that and find benefit from doing that. We have so many options, and that's their responsibility then, isn't it, to make the maintaining that connection. And often I think stepping outside of it, even just that can change the dynamic a lot. So it might actually, it's going to affect some sort of change. But I think once we are presented with the truth of a situation in a relationship or our own behavior or whatever it is, and we then continue it, I do think then we are become more responsible, and therefore like our karmic debt, if you like, the toll of that is gonna increase quite a lot. Now, I've done a few videos on this channel related to this idea of like karma. I can link them. There's like one about karmic mirroring and things. It shows us our patterns. There's one about how the new karmic cycle is going to be, because the information on my spiritual journey, the way I kind of have seen and relate to karma and things now, because I do resonate with this idea of karma, although it was quite challenging for me for a while. I think in the past we were able to create a karmic debt and transfer it into like future lives or for other, for our descendants and things. And that's how we've had this generational curses, generational karma, generational patterns, whatever you want. I think we've shifted into a new way of being now, in this 5D reality, if you like, where actually we're faced with our own karma, and the consequences of living with our own choices are going to be more present, more obvious, and actually appear to us now. Like, we're not going to be able to ignore or push back, or like, well, I'll just deal with that in the next life. I'm just going to carry on this abusive dynamic. I'm just going to carry on being a victim, or I'm just going to carry on and not change anything and not have any real consequences. I'll just deal with it in the next life, sort of thinking. I think we're now actually going to be faced with that. And what will happen is like the consequences of staying in those dynamics and not making a change, not evolving, will kind of become really, really difficult and more unbearable and challenging. So if we're going to choose in the future or in our present, as we're moving into the future, to continue to maintain what we then know, especially once we know it's a harmful dynamic, it's going to become more and more and more and more difficult. There's going to be like a separation, I think, of of people evolving into the new way of being, which is like literally receiving feedback from their behavior and growing, changing, experiencing, trying to make themselves better, create a better reality, and those that don't. And if you choose not to, then you're going to find that you will be held responsible for that choice, is my idea on this. I'm open to discussion about it though, so I'd love to know what you think. Does this resonate what I'm saying? Like, we're not responsible when we get caught up into manipulations, especially when we're unaware, but then the more aware we come and the more we choose them, then we are responsible? Or does that feel really terribly kind of judgmental or victim blamey to you? Let's have a discussion about it. How does that feel for you? How does that resonate with your ideas of relationship dynamics, or what you've learned, or the spiritual influences that you are getting? Let me know in the comments. I would love to know. Let's have a chat about it. And if you want to like dive into this idea of manipulation, abuse, or you want to look in your patterns of relationship, there's a couple courses that I think you'd be really benefit from. Have a look at Love School and go and have a look at Love School / Illusion for our Freedom from Illusion course. And that's going to really open your mind to dive into how we get caught into manipulation, looking at power dynamics, looking at abuses of power, and how we're conditioned into that from a systemic society point of view. And then also being yourself in relationships is kind of like looking at how we can show up in relationships in an authentic way without having to manipulate, to create more intimate, honest, close connections with people so we can grow and improve. And also, if you prefer a bundle, there's a couple of bundles. So either the Complete Mental Makeover, that might be interesting to you, which is all looking at the mind and things, or Healing for Connection, which is all about how we connect and relate to other people. But get on over to loveschool.uk for any of them courses. And of course, if you need any personal help from me, you can email mail@loveschool.uk. Thanks for watching.